The ultimate all-in-one electric homebrewing system is here. The new Grainfather G40 can produce up to 11 gallons of beer and features all the latest advancements in homebrewing technology, including wireless control so you can monitor your brew day from the Grainfather app. With an innovative new grain basket design that improves workflow, reaching mash efficiencies of 75% or more is easy. The 3300-watt heating element brings your wort to a boil quickly without any scorching, and the large hot plate filter guarantees that no unwanted grain matter or hop trub reaches your fermenter. Every G40 comes standard with a high-powered built-in pump that can handle temperatures over 200 degrees Fahrenheit and a full 3-year warranty that guarantees you'll be able to keep on brewing no matter what. The Grainfather G40 is available now at your favorite homebrew retailer or online at grainfather.com. Today's show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch that we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with over 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers who live to help other brewers learn more and ferment better. Join any recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at homebrewhappyhour.com/club and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
How the Ukraine war is affecting wheat and grain exports in Europe, how climate change is affecting global barley and hop yields, and catching up with Horst Dornbusch. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 278. Well, hello there, and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today is another fun, friendly special episode. There we go. I got it on the screen there. I've got the director of operations at cmbecker.com below me, Mr. James Carlson. I've got the president and chief kegwasher of kegconnection.com, Mr. Todd Burns. And we have our favorite, one of our fan favorites, as well as ours, Mr. Horst Dornbusch. Let me read what I wrote about him. Well-known brewer, author, beer judge, and speaker. He's also the author of one of our favorite books. He's the author of the Alt Beer book, Mr. Horst Dornbusch. My friend, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
It is such a pleasure to be back with you. As I indicated earlier, this is not my first rodeo, but it's definitely my favorite rodeo.
You flatter us.
Thank you.
You flatter us. We've got to get you to Texas at one of these days and judge. James, pardon me. Y'all probably, Todd and James might have already tapped their alt beer, but this recent iteration of James's alt beer, very solid. And James has the book up right now.
I'm pretty sure James has already finished his alt beer, haven't you, James?
I was gone a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but Todd got me this book because I was burnt. I was almost tired. I was almost quit brewing alt beer because I couldn't get it right. This made my alt beer better. Thank you.
It really did. I mean, I say it really did. It reinvigorated your drive for alt because you're getting so upset at yourself. We were enjoying what you were brewing, and you're like, "It's not right. It's not right."
No, it's not Dusseldorf alt.
Well, I fixed you good, as they say in bad English, right?
That's how we talk down here. What do you mean bad English? I would.
Hang on. I need to say something. You just had a promotional jingle about Grainfather. Okay. There is a small Grainfather set up at the Tributary Brewing Company in Kittery, Maine, about half an hour from here. And this is a brew pub. Not a brew pub, but it's a brewery with a tap room, and they have a 15-barrel system. Todd Mott is the owner and brewer, and I work a lot with him. And tomorrow I will be going over there, and we will be brewing on that little grain father a 5-gallon batch of a crazy beer that I invented, and it's an Imperial Helles.
Oh,
wow.
I wrote the book on Bavarian Helles in the Classic Field Style series, the same one as the alt beer. So tomorrow we are going to do we make a Helles on steroids. In other words, it's not a Märzen, it's not a Bock beer, not a Maibock, because we want the maltiness to be a little bit more subdued. It does not have any dry hopping. So it will be a malt and hop balanced beer, but we are thinking of maybe 50 IBUs or more. So
wow.
It will be a very gentle hop bomb where the hoppiness is very delicate. It's quality bitterness and a lot of the wonderful hop aromas from the most recent developments, the most recent crossings of the old German land races from Bavaria. So we do this thing naturally, all with Bavarian malt, Bavarian hops, and good old American water. And we add a little bit hardness to the water because we want it to come. No, that's another project. That will be the northern German Pilsner that we will make a tributary. I confused that. Anyway,
your life sounds fun. Like that's what it
Yeah.
is that all within the Rheinheitsgebot? I just have to ask because I mean
that one, yes, it's purely accidentally part of within the confines of the Rheinheitsgebot. But as you know, I left my home country in 1969, which meant I could also leave the confines of the Rheinheitsgebot. Now I can brew what the hell I please.
No purity law here, right?
You're a real American, Horst. I like it. You know, we do whatever we want.
So, Horst, a little off subject, but I have to tell you something. I read a book last week about okra because I'm wanted to grow some different strains of okra, and he talked a lot about land races, and I did not know what those were until you explained them to me on another podcast. So, thank you for that knowledge. It helped me while I was reading this last book. So,
very nice. Now, we have talked already a little bit here before the show, so of course I got a little bit thirsty. So if you don't mind, I will pour myself a beer.
Please do. And tell us, though, because I want the audience to see, it is a style that's also foreign to me. It's your creation at that same brewery you're just mentioning, right, Tributary?
This one is brewed in Kittery, Maine at the Tributary Brewing Company. We did it together. That's another one of my crazy inventions. And it's called a Bavarian IPA, a Bavarian style IPA. It's made entirely with Bavarian hops and with Bavarian malt. And the yeast is, of course, not Bavarian because you don't want a Hefeweizen yeast in a Bavarian style IPA. So we use the Chico yeast, okay? And of course, the water is American, and it's a beep. Oh, Scheibenkleister. Now I got myself. Let me just pour first, and then you
can... pour first and show us the can later. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I want to start inventing Bavarian stuff. I'm going to do I was going to say a Bavarian Kolsch. I'm going to edit that out. That would have made me look stupid.
Isn't that a nice creamy head?
That is. Look at that. Hold it up a little higher. There we go. Yeah. Wow. Look at that.
Beautiful.
So that's like a typical IPA color, and it's got about 45 IBU. It's double dry hopped with Aurum, which is a successor to the Spalt landrace, the Spalter hop landrace. And it's made entirely with Weiermann malt because I like that is good Bavarian malt. So here, cheers.
Cheers. I feel like I need to run to the beer.
Gosh, I wish I had a beer right now.
I thought it was, we'll have to, how can we get that? We really want to try it now. I wonder if we could find it somewhere.
It gets distributed only in New England right now, and it's a one-off. This is the first time it's been made in America. And there is one other brew I made in Bamberg at Bayermann. And recently that brew was also made by Sam Adams here in Boston as a test brew. They wanted to experiment with it. So this is a BIPA, a Bavarian style IPA. I mean, we have New Zealand IPAs, we have Australian IPAs, brut IPAs, cold IPAs, dark IPAs, black IPAs, Belgian IPAs.
Yeah.
My God. So I figured there's a real gap in the IPA spectrum, because Bavaria is a great beer culture, but it doesn't have its IPA yet. So I fixed that. And I co-authored an article with Thomas Kraus-Weiermann and my friend Walter Koenig, who is the head of the German Research Center in Höhl in the Hallertau. And that article will come out in the New Brewer in the July-August edition. So there are 3 recipes with slight variations, one brewed in Bamberg, one brewed in Boston, and one brewed in Kittery, Maine.
That is so cool.
Nice.
And I believe, Todd, we get that magazine from our membership in the Brewers Association. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be able to showcase that, because I don't know how else they distribute it unless you're a member of the BA.
Yeah, we have it. Yeah, we definitely get it.
Yeah. When it comes out, we'll share that and all that. So
then you can make it yourself, and you don't have to travel to New England to get it. And
There you go. Yeah.
The same theme. And we are totally off subject. We were going to talk.
Hi, we're talking beer, so that's
a good start.
Yeah, as long as we talk about beer, we're on brewing beer. We're on subject.
Listen, Horst.
And
go ahead.
I apologize. I had a bunch of dental work done an hour ago, and I'm missing half of my mouth. So if I sound funny, that's why.
As long as your brain is working full on both sides.
Yeah.
He always, people who watch us on YouTube won't notice a difference, because he always drools and kind of sloops like that. So there won't be too big a difference.
Mr. Castello, what do you say if you want to insult somebody?
Oh, no. That was not insulting. No, that was, you sound like my mother, Horst. Like, how what do you talk to Todd that way? You're right. We did, in the opener, I did say what the topics we were going to, but I did put a little note here that we're going to catch up with you and how you've been. You have been very busy as the pandemic has been kind of stabling out. I don't know what the word to use. I won't say it's ending, but as it's stabling out, are you finding yourself back on the road, going places, more innovation? It sounds like right now you're on a brewing kick where you're just innovating and making up, creating new concoctions and whatnot. Has that been because the pandemic has been slowing down?
Well, I've canceled all trips to Canada and Europe this year so far, and I may or may not go to the Drink Tech in Munich in September. If I choose not to go there, then there will be no travel this year for me except to Virginia.
Oh, okay. So you're still limited travel, yeah.
Yeah, but the pandemic has slowed me down a little bit. I'm now only about 125% overloaded with work. It used to be 75%. So I'm grateful for that.
That's hilarious. Yeah, well, you do seem to keep yourself busy and making good beer. You talked about brewing in a 5-gallon tomorrow on the Grainfather. When's the last time you brewed in such a small volume?
Oh, that's a long time ago. The last one I did was a Dunkelweizen Doppelbock, which I brewed with a friend in Montreal about 7 years ago.
I'll say, usually you're on pilot systems, right? When you're testing out your new beers, you're probably on much bigger batches.
Let me be totally conceited. I don't have to test them.
Oh, I like that.
That's good. I like that too.
That's hilarious. You can be conceited. You've earned it. Listen, when I have confidence, that's when people question stuff, Horst. They're like, wait a second. When I sent out a recipe, someone in our Trub Club group asked for a Kolsch recipe. And Kolsch is, as you know, is kind of my favorite style. And I sent a recipe and someone else goes, yeah, but maybe try this one instead. I was like, what the heck? All this is James's recipe. Why don't y'all trust me? It's easy. Kolsch is very easy.
Well, if you screw it, it's easy to screw up too.
Yes.
No. Do you have access to Brauwelt International?
No, I'm not familiar. Todd or James, are y'all familiar?
No.
Most prestigious, I would say, brew industry magazine in the world, comes out in 5 languages: English, German, French, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. And I think 2 years ago, I published an article with 7 Kölsch recipes, each using a different base malt, but keeping the rest of the recipes and the process identical. And if you get access to that, then you can fiddle with endless variations of modern Kölsch.
I would definitely try to get my hands on that.
International. You may know that magazine. If you
tell me the name again. I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
It was Brauwelt International.
Brauwelt.
You have Brautag behind you on Todd. You have Brautag behind you. It's like Brau, and instead of Tag, it's Welt, which is world, WELT. Brauwelt International. Hans Karl Verlag.
I found it. Okay.
I'm just thinking, Horst, I'm half German and half Mexican. That's a lot of rolling R's, man. There's a lot of rolling R's.
Can you say but a dog in Spanish? Pero un perro.
Yeah, perro.
Perro.
Pero un perro.
Perro un perro. Let me segue. Well, actually, before I do all that, real quick, bear with me, just so I can get through the very quick small talk before we start talking about the topics I brought Horst on to talk about. If you're, it's the last call for our April recipe right here on the screen. Horst, y'all can't see it, but the viewers can. Todd's Barn Beer. It's a delicious amber ale, shipping out with liquid Imperial Yeast. It's their house strain. $35, $50 members and above will get that sent out to them. If you're $35, it's every other month. So if it's your month, you'll get that out to you. And next week, don't forget, we're doing a drawing for our April giveaway, a Sanke coupler with MFL connections. These MFL connections, reminder, help you to switch between homebrew and commercial beers at the swivel of a nut. It's super easy, makes life convenient, especially if you're trying to enjoy multiple beers on the same lines. It's great. But yeah, go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour to learn more. Guys, I think that was the quickest I've ever gotten through the
That was good.
now
we can get to the meat.
That's right. So Horst, you are, like you said, you've been around the block. You've had your toes in the industry for a while. You know what's going on. A lot of people have written into us about, like, man, homebrewing kits are going up in price and craft beer's going up. There's a lot of factors and stuff. And as we mentioned back and forth in email, we'll start with this one and how it's affecting the wheat and grain exports in Europe and abroad. The Ukraine conflict and everything that's going on over there. What is your take as a craft beer connoisseur? How is that conflict affecting the rest of us as homebrewers and connoisseurs of craft beer in the States or globally, rather?
I think I can demystify all of that, and I must apologize that I have to throw a whole bunch of statistics at you, and you don't have to remember them, but just to give you the framework, I will actually give them to you. Let's do barley first and then hops. In barley, we know that the average world production of barley per year is about 150 to 160 million metric tons. 150 to 160. Let's just be simple, say 150. We should keep that figure in mind as the base so that we understand which segment of the world is important and which is not for the production of barley. And then we also want to look at the consumption of barley. And in that context, I have to make sure you understand that of that 100%, which is 150 million plus minus a bit, 80% goes into animal feed. Okay, that's lower quality barley. 5% goes into human food and also biofuel, which is a growing segment in the barley production area. That leaves only about 15%. It's hard to estimate that on a global scale because every country is different. It leaves about 15% of the crop for beer. Now, you can say if a country that produces mostly feed barley drops out of the barley pool, that doesn't affect beer making, but it is not so, as you will find out later on when we talk about, are you ready for this? About the camels of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. They have something to do with the cost of your brewing raw materials. We'll get to that. Don't worry. I just want to set it up so that you know that, so that you stick with me while I am elaborating. Now, in Germany, for instance, malting and brewing quality barley amounts to about 80% of the harvest. In other places, it's maybe 20%. In Ethiopia, for instance, 90% of the barley harvest goes into human consumption, whereas worldwide is only 5%. In Bavaria, 95% of the barley is of malting and brewing quality. It's unique in the world. That's why Bavaria has produces great brewing barley, right? So now, in the last decades, world consumption of barley has been larger in most years, with very few exceptions, larger than the harvest. So we run a net deficit of barley. And what is perhaps not known to most brewers is that every country keeps a strategic barley reserve. They, just like a strategic oil reserve, they also have a strategic wheat reserve and several other strategic agricultural reserves. They have been kind of substantial in the past, maybe exceeding 50, 60, 70 million metric tons. Mm-hmm. Today, the best estimates that I could find very quickly on the internet, to be totally current, today, we have only 12 million metric tons of reserves in the world of barley. A year earlier, it was 22 million. You can see where that curve is going, right? Now, it is important for us to understand if barley production in a major producer country disappears compared to what we've got in reserves, there's one country in particular that could kill the entire reserve of barley in the world, and that's Russia. We get to that in a minute, okay? So, let's talk briefly about climate, all right? And then I'll get back to the nasty statistics. And I just got a stupid message here that I just clicked away. Okay, fine. So, we can use climate change. We can use an example of climate change. Globally, July 2021 was warmer than the average 20th century July, and it was the hottest months globally on record ever since measurements started to be taken about 142 years ago, July. And that is when barley ripens and hops also develops its major side shoots and all of that. So July is an important month, but globally it was the warmest months on record last year. Next, in Southern Europe, and believe it or not, Southern Europe is important for barley production. You may not know that Spain and Turkey rank among the top barley producers in Europe. Yeah, that's a surprise, but they produce mostly feed barley, but nonetheless, if that doesn't become available, then the people who buy feed barley have to buy brewing quality barley if they have the money to pay the up price, the markup. In Europe last year in the summer, from Spain to Greece to Turkey, the temperature rose above 120 degrees Fahrenheit for several days, the highest temperature ever on record in Europe. I know you live in Texas and you're accustomed to this, but if you are a barley stock in Europe, in Greece, or in Turkey, then you don't like that, and you may not be very productive. Thus, the substantial portions of barley from these countries drop out of the global pool. And remember, we only have 12 million metric tons left in reserve. and we produce about 150 million plus or minus. So that's the ratio. So let's go into who. Oh, yeah. And when that happens, I tell you, do you know what lodging is in barley?
No.
The stalks of break, they tip over. Mm-hmm. That happens usually when there's too much rain. Then the barley fields are flat, and the barley basically rots on the stalk. It can happen when you got too much rain in August. Happens very often. If the climate is nuts and you have dry spells in July and in June and July, but you get torrential rains in August, chances are your crop is ruined. And again, keep in mind 150 million metric tons. So we talk about numbers later. Then we have late or secondary tillering. Do you know what that is?
No.
When it gets too wet in August, the plant starts to shoot, to send new shoots up. And by the time you harvest the major shoot, the little shoots are underdeveloped. So you thresh this and you have a mix of very plump kernels and basically underdeveloped kernels. So that makes that batch unsuitable for malting and brewing. You want to have a 90 to 95% of a batch the kernels should have a diameter of 2.5 millimeters or more. That's considered plumpness. So if you have secondary tillering, you're below that, and the farmer grew barley for brewing, for malting and brewing, but now the farmer has to sell it at a lower price for animal feed. So that is one effect. You can also get over-ripeness if it gets too hot. You get a low germination rate if it gets too hot. So you have wonderful kernels in your germination box in a malting company, but half of them will not germinate, so they cannot become malt. So the result will be a substandard malt for your beer making. You can taste all the phenolics of the husks, but you don't get the malty sweetness because it doesn't germinate, thus the enzymes don't start working. You get inhomogeneity, I told you that. So who produces all that barley? Now, there is a reason why barley is produced, good barley, brewing barley is produced in only a limited number of areas in the world. Good barley. I mean, barley is very resilient. You can grow it anywhere almost, but not all of it is good for brewing. So the biggest barley producers, however, are not necessarily the biggest beer producers. That means if a country is a gigantic barley producer, but really doesn't produce a lot of beer, that barley gets shipped to the consumers, right? So we need a lot of global trade, which means we need shipping. Shipping all of a sudden and container availability is a big issue. So if we have a problem, it affects the price of barley. At the Chicago Commodity Exchange or at the Mercosur in Argentina, or at the one in France, the prices go up. So more than half the world's beer production is in 5 countries, right? And I just listed them. I wrote that down so I wouldn't forget. The biggest is China, United States, Brazil, Mexico, and Germany, in that order. But these 5 countries are not necessarily, or not at all, the biggest barley producers. The United States is insignificant. Brazil is insignificant. Mexico is insignificant as barley producers. So they rely on shipping. The 27 EU countries, now after Brexit, without the UK, they are obviously the largest barley producing bloc. The EU produces about 50 to 55 million metric tons of barley a year. So the EU produces a third of the world barley.
Wow.
So if the EU craps out, 50 to 55 million metric tons is more than our 12 metric tons reserve.
Yeah.
Holy crap. So there is a scarcity. And you know what happens in the face of scarcity? Price goes up. And maybe the quality goes down because maltsters have to make compromises. So a batch of barley that they would normally reject because it's got too much protein, not enough protein, too many duds or whatever, all of a sudden they have to accept that to just stay in business. So quality standards go down.
Yep.
Now, in the European Union, France is the biggest producer, about 11 million. Germany is about 10 to 11 million. And guess what? España is almost 10 million metric tons. Compare that always to 150 million world production. Surprise, huh? España. And if you have a heat wave and it's 140 degrees, their production drops by 1/2. That affects the feed market, not the malting market. But then the feed consumers have to go for malting quality grain to feed their camels. UK is 7 million, Poland almost 4 million, Denmark 3.2 million, US 3.5 million, by the way. US and Denmark produce the same amount. And this goes up and down depending on the weather. Denmark could be a little bit ahead or behind the US, but it's considering 150 million metric tons in a year, 3 million is nothing.
No, it really. Why doesn't the U.S. with our land mass have higher numbers than that? In your opinion,
I would say the environment would be a big thing.
Well, also the cost. I mean, it probably doesn't bring as much as some other crops that are big money makers.
Correct. You look at the cattle industry here, the soybean production. Brewing barley production is high risk agriculture because so much can go wrong. And if you have plenty of land, vast tracts of with mechanized agriculture, high capital intensity, you try to go for a safe crop in an assured market. And you can always sell soybeans. Wheat is, very profitable. So this is, a farmer needs to make a decision. What will I plant? And most of our North Dakota, Montana, and Idaho, and the state of Washington are among our big barley producers. Okay, and brewing quality barley, you get it more from Idaho. And Idaho ain't that big. You talk about land mass. Well, if you want to plant brewing barley next to Comanche, Texas, let me know. And we'll talk maybe next year how it turned out. And I think we can predict already that it ain't going to do much good for you.
No,
it's just too damn hot.
That's the reason so much of the good barley comes from Canada, I would guess, right?
You're going to get to Canada in a minute. Yes. Yeah. So why don't I just, to really get to the guts of what we're talking about, throw a bunch of statistics at you, and then you don't have to remember them, but they give you the impression of what we're talking about. So France exports because they produce more than they can get. And the biggest destination for French barley nowadays is China. Then UK, Mexico, Northern Africa, and the Middle East. Spain, 10 million, almost 10 million metric tons. But they send their barley only by rail and truck because they don't have the harbor facilities for big shot barley shipments to ocean destinations. Turkey, I told you, was a surprise. And the central Anatolia region there is the barley basket of Turkey. And they produce mostly feed barley, and it goes to the Middle East. It's close by. Okay. We talked about Scandinavia, Denmark 3.2, Sweden 1.5, Finland 1.3, and Norway 0.6. So Scandinavia produces almost twice as much barley as the US. Interesting, huh? North America, I said 3.5, same as Denmark. Canada, in a good year, 10.5. But Canada can go up between 6 and 13. It depends on the weather.
Right.
And it mostly comes from Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. Okay. So it's very concentrated. So if the prairie provinces get a premature cold snap or soggy soil and they can't get into the fields until July, when it's really late to toss out the seeds, then Canada goes down to 6. If it's an ideal year, Canada might produce 13, 13.5. So in the global scale, and always remember, our reserves are 12. Always remember that. Southern Hemisphere, Argentina, 5 in a good year, but it can go down a lot. More than they need. Most of it goes 70%. Half of the Argentinian volume is exported. 70% goes to China.
Wow.
Yeah. And then also to Brazil, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Thailand. Australia, roughly 13 million. And it can go down to 8 or 9 in a bad year. So Australia produces about 10% of the world's barley. And I think their domestic consumption is around 3, if I remember correctly. So now we get to the war. The Black Sea countries. Those are countries that don't necessarily border the Black Sea, but they ship through the Black Sea. And you know what's going on in the Black Sea area right now. So the key Black Sea countries, for barley at least, are Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, for a combined total of about 30 to 35 million out of 150 million metric tons of barley. And most of it is feed barley. So that is as much as 20% of global consumption. And consider we only have 12 metric tons in reserve. Russia is good for 20 million metric tons of barley. And guess what? The free world has just slapped sanctions on Russia. So out of the 150 million, take away 20, and we got a reserve of 12. You're still with me?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know those are a lot of numbers. Ukraine, 9 million is the average.
Wow.
You can't ship that. The rails, the stuff is being bombed. Kazakhstan, 4 million. And, you know, they have their internal turmoil right now, right? In addition, Black Sea countries, another 3 million comes from Belarus, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. Whew. So they're huge producers of barley, but their share of malting barley is comparatively small. Yet they supplied the Middle East and Northern Africa and China with feed barley. I'm going to get to that significance in a minute. So there is a lot of substitute purchasing now going on at any price. It consumes a lot of shipping if you have to take barley, replace Russian barley with barley from Australia and Argentina and France. So let's look who consumes the barley. There are some surprises. The second largest importer in the world after China. China has to import 10 million metric tons of barley a year.
Wow.
Because they produce a lot of beer. Which one is the second largest barley importer in the world?
I would think the U.S., if I had to guess.
I don't know if it's the U.S. I would probably say probably Europe.
I'll just say some Middle East, like the UAE or something. I have no idea.
Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow.
There are next to no people, but a lot of camel. Saudi Arabia imports 7.5 million metric tons, or half a percentage point of the entire global production goes to Saudi Arabia.
I guess that only because I don't see how they grow it. They couldn't grow it themselves there, right?
There isn't much. That's right. So it's all feed quality for the camels. So without the Black Sea exports, the sheiks, they sit on a lot of oil money and they love their camels. I hope for the right reasons. These guys buy barley from France, Canada, or wherever, including Australia and Argentina. So that drives the prices up. And what happens in Saudi Arabia is the same that happens in other Middle East countries. Just take Iran, 3.7 million metric tons production, consumption 7.5 million. So they have to import half their barley, and 1/4 of it used to come from Russia. Now it comes from the Netherlands, Germany, Australia, Turkey, and Switzerland, and the UK. They get it anywhere they can. United Arab Emirates, they import 500,000 metric tons. Africa, Ethiopia produces 2 million. 90% goes into human consumption. The only country where barley is that high as a percentage share of human consumption. Morocco produces a surprising 2.5 million metric tons in a good year, but there's always the drought risk, so it can go to as low as 500,000. So they fluctuate a lot and depend on French barley reserves to keep their supply stable. Algeria produces 1 million, imports 3/4 million. Tunisia, 500,000 production, imports 1.3 million. South Africa, 500,000 production. They have good reserves of 0.75 million. 95% of South African barley is of malting quality. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
So I back off with the statistics. You get the picture, right? And other than that, in Africa, there's not much going on in terms of barley. In other words, Niger or Burkina Faso, or no barley there. So now something happened on May 19, 2020. What was that?
Was that when most global economies shut down, or the shipping fiascos?
It was an announcement by the Chinese Commerce Ministry that has enormous repercussions on the global barley economy. Enormous. Remember, China produces 1 million metric tons of barley for all purposes, including feed. They import 10 million. They import 2.5 times as much barley as the United States produces. And they can afford to pay if they have to. They're not price sensitive. China announced on May 13, 2020, a 5-year, 80.5% import tariff on Australian barley, as well as other commodities from Australia, such as coal, by the way. It's not. So they almost doubled the cost of barley, Australian barley, for Chinese breweries. Basically, they put an embargo on.
Right, yeah, to shut it down, yeah.
And remember, Australia can be as high as 13 million metric tons of barley. So what the hell do they do with their barley, the Australians? They got to sell it elsewhere. And what does China do to get its barley? All of a sudden, you can see the cross currents of boats going back and forth in the wrong direction. Now, really think about it. And with the pandemic and the ports are all shut down, we'll get to that in a minute. So, Australia used to export 6 million metric tons to China every year. China, being stupid as they are, forgive me, China. I like people from China, but that government is dumb.
He listens to the show.
They license only 5 countries for import of barley into China. 5 countries. I tell you what they are. I wrote it down. Argentina, Canada, France. Are you ready? Ukraine. And Uruguay. Now, Uruguay makes 300,000 metric tons of barley a year, so that's not going to be something that will rescue the Chinese barley economy, right? China's largest importer. Okay, so I just said China is the largest barley importer in the world. They need 10 million metric tons. So Australia had to find new markets, and they went to Thailand, Japan, Vietnam. Mexico is a huge buyer of Australian barley. And guess what? It's the camels of Saudi Arabia. And they eat Australian brewing quality barley, those camels.
That's wild.
That's
that's sad.
half the Australian barley now goes to Saudi Arabia. See the dislocation? No, you know,
and it's just going to get worse. I mean, we've got a ticking time bomb ahead of us on all this stuff.
Now, there is a global container shortage because of the pandemic. In order to demonstrate that, I can't give you real statistics, but I can give you a neat example. The Suez Canal, it takes about 50 ships and tankers a day, 50 ships. That shipment represents 12% of the entire global ocean-free trade at any one time. And if one ship runs aground, you have 12% of global freight stuck. There were as many as 300 ships that were stuck last year in March. Right now, some of the major ports in the world, they have 40 containers waiting to be unloaded or loaded. In normal times, there is usually no wait at all because it's costly. Yeah. So you think about 50 ships is 12% of the market, the global transport market. You take Los Angeles, Shanghai, and a bunch of other ports like that, and you can easily be at half the world's trade is right now on the oceans, waiting to be loaded or unloaded.
That's wild.
And barley needs to be shipped because the producing countries are not the barley producing countries, are not the barley consumption countries. And we have stupid politics and war interfering with established trading patterns.
See, that sums it all up. That right there, what you just
that's it.
Stupid politicians and boom. We to run credits, right? Like that's always been my premise, Horst, for everything. When people go, well, what's the problem with this? I'm like, it's got to be a stupid politician behind it. What's the problem with this? Got to be a stupid politician behind it.
Yeah. Well, the problem I see is, we've had shipping issues for going on 2 years now.
Yes.
We've got, I know in our business, we're having to not only worry about that, the increased cost, the euro exchange. Now we're talking COVID, which has affected everything. Restaurants were shut down, affected our business. And now we've got this dumb war that's going to affect all the business that direction. It'll ripple. All this stuff is slowly rippling towards us. Mm-hmm. And I'm just afraid there's going to be a perfect storm of supply chain, COVID, logistical issues. And we got food shortages coming up.
Yeah.
Russia is one of the largest producers of fertilizer for crops.
Correct.
And you can't have good crops without fertilizer. So then you've got to throw that into the mix. I mean, what the hell are we looking at a year from now?
Well, the poorer countries will definitely have more hunger among the population because the shortages and dislocations drive up the price of just about everything. I mean, think of energy. Russia is a major energy producer. Russia is also, everything we said about barley can also be said about wheat and other commodities, including rape seeds, soya, and so on. So what you just said is so true, and I don't see, unless there is a miracle and Putin is eliminated from the scene, or there is some negotiated settlement that will ease the situation, and the pandemic gets under control so that the Shanghai port can open up again and start working off the backlog, not just there, but also in Florida and in Florida and New York, everywhere. So let's talk briefly about hops, because we talked a lot about barley, and I know we don't have endless time. In hops, the situation is both much simpler and much more complicated. And I don't have as detailed a set of data that I can throw at you, but I think I got the gist of it. As you know, roughly, hops doesn't grow everywhere, right? It's between the 35th and the 45th or maybe 50th parallel. And then the soil condition has to be right, the drainage, the soil composition. They like a glacial silt, for instance, the hop plants. So, and we know we have global warming and the hop plants the climate is changing faster than hop plants can adapt. In the old days, a farmer may have gotten 1,500 kilograms of hops. 1,500, I apologize.
No, you're
Same
right.
thing.
You're right. Yep.
Per hectare in Europe. Today, sometimes they only get 750 to 800.
Wow.
The input cost in terms of energy and all that stuff, they're going up. But you can't really raise the price that much because maybe nobody will buy it. So there is an issue here. And that is why the Hop Research Center in Hull, the hop researchers and hop breeders in Satek in the Czech Republic, in Lublin in Slovenia, in Eugene, Oregon, Yakima Valley, in Victoria, and Tasmania in Australia, they are frantically trying to breed new hybrids that can thrive in the new conditions created by climate change. Okay, so we know that 40% of the world hops comes roughly from Germany, 40% from America, from the US, mostly Oregon, Idaho, Washington, and about 20% come from about a dozen other countries. And I wrote them down. They are Czechia, Slovenia, Poland, France, Belgium, UK, New Zealand, Australia, China, and South Africa. All right. And they are in that, they have soil and suitable soil in that narrow band. And the band has to be narrow because between April and September, the hop plant needs 12 hours of sunlight a day, and they have to have the correct angle to the sun. You only get that in those. So you couldn't move the hop gardens to another location, then the angle to the sun would be wrong and the growing period wouldn't be long enough. So the only thing you can do is create hybridizations to create the old flavors of the old land races and create more resistances to new bugs, diseases, verticillium, pleonospora, all kinds of aphids, whatever, spotted spider mites, all kinds of weird stuff. So we can't move. Now, 45 to 50,000 metric tons of hops are harvested in Germany every year, and the same in the United States. More than half of the German hops, and I don't have the number for the US, sorry for that, more than half of the German hops is exported. So we're talking about 25,000 metric tons. The United States is by far, the biggest recipient of that exported hops. Now comes a crucial issue. You know who ranks second?
No idea.
I'll tell you who ranks third, fourth, and
China.
fifth. Brazil is third, Japan second, China third.
It's got to be Germany then, right?
So Germany, the second most important export market after the United States for Germany, and before Brazil, Japan, and China, is Russia.
Oh,
Really?
Wow.
Russia?
Now, they grow no hops, but they have a huge population, and they drink a lot of beer. So there is now an embargo, or there are sanctions. The Western world doesn't trade with Putin anymore, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where will that German hops go? The America doesn't export much to, right? So the Germans have now embarked on a massive promotional campaign to sell their hops in the United States. I know so because I've been asked to help. Craft beer uses 4 to 5 times as much hops as does Industrial light lager.
My beers don't.
Right, but now think about it. You know
That was an inside joke. I don't like IPAs, so all my stuff is low IBUs.
I agree with you. Actually, I prefer a crisp, clean tasting beer that tastes like beer rather than something that tastes like a milkshake or something like that. Now you know that it's 4 to 5 times more hops in craft beer than regular factory beer. However, right now there's a new development that is detrimental to the hop growers. About 20% of craft beverages are now alternative beverages brewed without malt and hops. They are called hard seltzer, hard cider, hard lemon tea, hard kombucha, hard June, hard coffee, hard crapola. I don't know what else. Anything you can name and you can shake a stick at, it becomes hard. Never mind that.
That's right.
Never mind. So Germany, as I said, is not now marketing the living hell out of their hops in the United States. And where is their ray of hope? The revival of session beers.
Yeah, that's what everybody's starting to go to. We were ahead of the curve, James. You were ahead of the curve because that's what everybody's trying to brew now. So it's the crisp lagers are the new IPA, right? So,
yes. So then let me conclude, and then you can ask me questions, and maybe we can have another beer.
Hold on.
So basically, we can say that there are a lot of factors now that are increasing the cost and the availability of the key brewing raw materials. And I'm very serious. And I'm not even talking about water shortages in Texas and along the Colorado River and all that. And I'm not talking about yeast shortage because I don't think we have one. So there's war, there's sanctions, climate catastrophes, low reserves. Remember, if one of the big countries craps out because of the climate disaster or weather disaster, we get underwater with our 12 million metric tons of reserves. Okay? And the sheikhs of Araby will buy them for their camels, trust me. So really, then we have irrational policy decisions. We have shipping chaos on the high seas. We have increased energy costs. We have inflation. All of that makes the future of raw materials more and more uncertain. And maybe, and I'll finish on that point, maybe maltsters and brewers might have to lower their quality standards to get their hands on stuff, even if it is substandard. Because if you don't have malt, chances are you don't have beer. And so that is the way I look at if you wish, the danger of the future. And meanwhile, expect that your homebrew kit will double in price.
Yeah, we've seen the ingredients shoot up, and it's wild. I want to, like, worst case scenario, not to make it doom and gloom, but we've already kind of, if people are still with us right now, they've already got the tone of like, oh God, maybe homebrewing, I gotta do something else. Worst case scenario, nothing changes. The conflict rages on. Ukraine and and Russia don't come to a settlement. They're still warring by 2023, and China's still in lockdown because they just went back to lockdown, and the pandemic doesn't come by. I'm not even talking about brewing. You think this is all much more serious than that, right? As worst case scenario.
Yeah. I mean, you just summed it up. I mean, I hope the cascade of statistics. I know that's boring to listen to this. It's all those bloody numbers. But always keep in mind, if you put it in perspective, there's 150. That's your number. 12 is reserves. Okay? And the world consumes more than 150 every year. And reserves have been declining from about 50 to right now 12. They were 22 a year ago. Just extrapolating the curves, that's boring math, but it's the reality. And so because we like beer, we like to brew beer, we better know what's coming our way. And maybe for some brewers, believe it or perversely, I have to say, the TTB considers hard seltzer a beer for tax reasons.
Right.
It's considered a beer. The TTB, the Trade and Tariff, the label approval agency, the federal one. So maybe for brewers, if they make a ton of hard seltzer and maybe even replace hard seltzer as the majority craft category, maybe it's good for them because then they use cane sugar.
Right.
And they don't.
The one thing that so the United States is the second largest producer of beer, and we don't grow very much barley at all, so we import the vast majority of it. I think the vast majority of it probably comes from Canada and Germany because that's where the higher quality is.
You're correct.
So, and Germany and Canada seem to be doing pretty well on that. Do you think that Saudi Arabia and these Arabic countries that are feeding barley to camels, why barley? Is that, can they feed other grains to those animals?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why do you know why they feed them barley?
There has always been, at least in the past, a price differential between wheat and barley.
Okay. So if barley goes up considerably, then
maybe they'll switch.
It may be cheaper to feed them wheat, and we still get our barley from Canada for a little bit more, and from Germany for a little bit more. That'll be good for Germany and Canada, and we still have our beer, right?
No, a universal scarcity of agricultural crops raises the price of all boats, so to speak. In other words, the differential will remain, and wheat will get even more expensive. In other words,
there's a lot of wheat grown in Russia, definitely. So, and in the Ukraine, but there's a hell of a lot of wheat grown in the United States and Canada too. So, it helps to have it close to you as well.
Well, the thing is, remember, 35 is the number for the Black Sea countries. 35. 3.5 is the number for the US, 10 plus minus a few for Canada, just to keep that in perspective, and 50 to 60 for the EU overall, excluding UK. They usually contribute, 3 to 4 or whatever. So if the Black Sea countries really disappear from the food chain, that impact is tremendous. And it affects also wheat, it affects oats, it affects the fertilizer, the nitrate fertilizers, it affects soy, rapeseed, and all kinds of other products. So,
well, yeah, you bring up a really good point with the fertilizer because a very large percentage of fertilizer in the world comes from Russia. So that we're already seeing that the cost of fertilizer,
and from Ukraine, by the way.
Yeah, the cost of fertilizer in the United States has really gone up a lot in the last year. So, yeah.
So the Germans are breeding hop varieties that are more efficient nitrogen uptaker, if that's a word. Mm-hmm. In other words, you can now grow hops with perhaps, I don't want to give you a precise number, but I think it's like 40% of the hops that you had to dish out in the old days. And they're creating new techniques for disseminating fertilizer using what they call fertigation. In other words, they have irrigation systems where you dispense the fertilizer dissolved in water rather than as crystals.
Yeah, that's how I fertilize all my gardens. I use drip irrigation with the fertilizer in the water.
Much more efficient, and you can do it when needed. Whereas if you throw out the crystals and it is too dry, they don't get dissolved and the plants don't get them. If it's too wet, they get dissolved and they seep into different layers of the soil where they're not doing any good. So they are real. We have to work on, humanity has to work on a lot of fronts, and one is avoiding stupid wars. I think that's
this whole episode, Horst, you've convinced me politicians are stupid and barley is fickle. I had no idea. how fickle barley crops could be. I'm learning something every day. That is so much info. So yeah, like I said, getting your forecast for the future. Let's just say best case scenario, I'm going to keep brewing Kolsch and it's going to be mediocre and life will be good, right? That's best case scenario. So
Yeah, right. And I think we should drink on that. And I just wanted to show you a special beer I picked up yesterday while we were tasting the Sam Adams BIPA. And let's see if you can read this. This is the can. I tried to make sure the glare from the light isn't on it.
Sam Adams big beer, little can, barrel aged Matson.
Ooh, wow.
Wow.
Aged Malson. And I happen to know that the barrel was a Jack Daniels barrel. So
Nice.
Now that's one you've already tasted that before, right? That's not your first can of it, I'm assuming.
This one?
Yeah.
Yes, I picked it up yesterday. I have not tasted it myself yet.
Oh, I just
it is a little can. What is that? 8 ounces?
Yes. It's a tiny. It's a big beer in a small can or something like that. So this
it looks like an alt beer glass.
You got it. Yes. So let's just see what we can say about this one. So this is it's a limited edition. They don't make much of it, and it's made in their trial brewery here in Boston. You know, they have big breweries elsewhere in the country. So let's just see if you can.
Oh yeah.
Brew it up again. Can't take me.
I don't think barrel aged. That's not in the Reinheitsgebot now. Come on, this is not.
I didn't say anything about what you stored it in. It just has to have water, yeast, hops, and
That's
barley.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah, if you put it in a whiskey barrel, it doesn't affect any of those laws.
I said my recipes sometimes are. This is not my recipe. So, but it may be a good beer.
Oh, it sounds great. It is. Yeah, it is that time of the year for us to be brewing these. Last time you've been on the show before and corrected us that it's not really the traditional Oktoberfest beer anymore. That the Helles is, but now would be the time to be brewing those Oktoberfest beers, right?
Yes, the name Märzen, of course, comes from the month of March. März is German for March, and brewers in the old days, before people had refrigeration. And when they started making infected beer in the summer, and it gets very hot in Bavaria in the summer, trust me, and it's getting very cold in the winter in the foothills of the Alps. So they have like more of a continental climate than a maritime climate like in England. So Duke Albrecht V in 1553 decreed that in his realm, which was Bavaria, no brewer is allowed to brew beer between April 23rd and September 29th. So they brewed a ton of beer in February and March. And then they aged them in cellars, in caves, in the mountains or whatnot, wherever they could keep them cool. And that was the beer consumed in the summer. And so that was the Märzen beer, the March beer.
Oh, you got to try it. I'm dying to. I can't stand it any longer.
Yeah,
drink it and tell us.
And then, if there was any left at the time when they could brew again and they had a new harvest, that was October. Okay. So they finished the Märzen beer in October, and it's just a well-aged Märzen beer. Nowadays, they have mystique about Oktoberfest beer, but it really, it grew organically. And here it is. That's the Sam Adams Märzen.
Looks good.
Nice
go for it. Todd's dying.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
I smell raisins, caramel. You do get the bourbon, the vanilla bourbon flavor, definitely. In the nose, that is. And in the taste, it is like nothing. No.
I was just say, wait, what?
In the taste, you have a slight viniferous component. Almost, I'm trying to find a good association. It's sort of like fig, but with a touch of almost like malt vinegar, if that makes any sense. That would be the middle. and it's very solid in terms of the body. You notice it has, of course, no head, which is not unusual for a barrel-aged beer. The can does not tell me the alcohol content, believe it or not. But given what you can taste, I would suspect it's in the 8+ range. I wouldn't be surprised.
I imagine,
yeah, I'm sure of it. It's like a barley wine range, I would say. And the finish is actually very sweet. It's surprisingly honey-like in the finish. And to be honest with you, I taste almost no hops.
Wow.
I mean, I have to be honest. Sorry, Jim. But hey, sometimes they fly me around the world to judge. So
we need a whole.
I might know.
We need a whole new show called Horst Taste, and
that's right.
I will send you beer, and you will judge it and just be brutally honest. And not my beer, commercial.
Not yours, right?
We could send you. We could send you a couple of my beers to start with. You can just tear them to pieces. Yeah.
I told you at the beginning of the show I'm easy.
You did say that. You did.
So,
that's interesting. Barrel aged,
and they don't distribute that barrel aged, right? Because it's limited. They don't nationally distribute it.
It's distributed in a very narrow market here. Right. In other words, it is a commercial can. No, it's the real thing.
I meant nationally.
No.
Yeah, we can't get it here. In other words,
well, it's very unlikely that you can get it there. Yes.
Right. Oh,
so Horst, before we let you go, I have a question.
Sure.
Because you just tried that beer and the one before. What do you have can you think of a beer right now has come out that is available that you would recommend people try?
You talking about an alt beer, right?
No, any beer.
Oh, any beer.
Any beer.
Okay.
You see, the thing is, I live in New England.
Okay.
And by the way, in the fall, I intend to move to Williamsburg, Virginia.
Oh, nice. Very nice place.
So, I spent 10 years in Canada, and the accumulation of snow there between November and early June is about 6 to 8 feet, depending on the season. In Boston, it's about half that much. In Williamsburg, Virginia, it's 6 inches.
That sounds like Texas.
So I think I have done, I have paid enough homage to the god of white, dense water, crystal water from the sky, which, of course, in Montreal, where I lived for 10 years, turns pitch black after about 2 weeks because of the city grime. Snow is always pitch black in Montreal after a while. Anyway, so I think I have earned it at my ripe old age to live in a more benign climate. This is principally why I'm moving. And I like history, as you know. I'm a bit of a freak there. And I'm friends with Frank Clark, who is the master of traditional foodways, as well as the brewer at the Colonial Williamsburg setup. And he makes a mighty fine colonial brown ale. It's wonderful. The real one that he makes in a wooden bucket and all that, with wood-fired kettles and all that good stuff. I love that.
Oh, cool.
And it's not available commercially because he can't guarantee sterility and all that,
Right.
modern hygiene laws. But I had it, and it's gorgeous. So I'm looking forward to exploring additional traditional beers with him at his ancient brewery that is right next to the governor's mansion down there in that compound. So
yeah, I think I've seen a video of him on YouTube.
Yes, of course you have. Frank
I love that. Yep.
Yes, that's him. And he is such a charming gentleman.
Yeah, seems like a super cool guy.
Oh my God, is he ever. So we get along. So this is another incentive for me to move. So, I mean, I love New England. It's wonderful, and I feel quite at home here, and I'm doing okay. Everything is fine. but I'm just getting sick and tired of shoveling snow.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. We don't have to do that a lot here.
Yeah, I was just saying, that's the best part of living here. No shovel, no snow shovel.
And as I mentioned, I don't want to come to Comanche for good because
because we're here.
Yeah,
we get it. Yeah.
Well, starting from May all the way through October, it's brutal. I mean, it's just hot every single day. But for the most part, we have maybe 2 or 3 weeks of winter, and it's mild from November. You know, we had that winter storm last year, and this year we had, I think, a week of really cold weather. But for the most part, today it's 80. Yesterday it was 70 degrees or 20 degrees Celsius. Today it's going to be about 80. It was 47 this morning when we woke up.
Yeah.
But, you know, I love weather here, but if I was rich, I would be a snowbird and live on the East Coast somewhere.
Winter Texas.
You know, between starting in May and then come back home in November.
So you have 1 month of winter, you have summer and 1 month of winter, whereas in Montreal, you have winter and 1 month of summer.
Yeah, exactly.
1 month of very bad skiing.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Horst, we could have you on for hours and hours, but we respect your time. I greatly that was a ton of info, and we get this question so much when people come like, man, what is up with all the rising cost? I'm going to send them to this link to this episode because it's not enough to just say global conflict. They need to know the numbers. It really puts it into perspective, like you said. And not lying, I had to take the camera away from me a couple times because I was crying in fear of our potential future. But besides all that heaviness, we greatly appreciate you coming on the show, and we're going to have you on again. We are so grateful that you're willing to do the show. So thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We really, really enjoyed it.
Well, as I said, you're my favorite rodeo, not my first favorite.
We appreciate it, Horst. We will talk to you soon, my friend.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now you can leave us a voicemail at 325-305-6107. Brew better beer with the new Grainfather G40 all-in-one electric system available now at grainfather.com. Also, get a pack of Imperial Yeast along with premium recipes from us when you join our Trub Club. Go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and come brew with us. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.